My name is Sriram. I work with the pre-sales team of Zoho Creator. In this session, we are going to see a few examples on how to implement Deluge scripting into an application and automate certain parts of your businesses. Again, when we say automation, you are basically trying to program something or instruct the system to do something which may be a repetitive process. Like, say, for example, you have an order management process in your organization. Whenever an order is being placed, you want a confirmation email or an acknowledgement email to be sent to the customer. Or in case if there is a distribution team who needs to be notified about the new order, you also trigger an email or an SMS task. So you don't actually have to employ a human to send an email whenever a new order is being placed. This simple process can be automated with a piece of code, and that's all. It's just going to be a one-time setup, and the system will take care of the process automatically from then on. Now, when you program or when we talk about scripting, we are actually giving some set of instructions to the system, be it a computer, be it a programming system, whatever it may be. We are actually giving some kind of an information. And since there is no human involved, 99% of the errors are removed. It would simply do whatever you program it to do. And how do you say that to the system? How do you say that what needs to be done? So that's some kind of information you'll have to provide. And there are mainly two components or two kind of information that we would like to provide to the system so that the automation happens seamlessly. Number one is going to be the time at which the action needs to be triggered, or you may also call it as a trigger point. So considering the previous example of the order management, so when the email is triggered is basically when an order is being placed or when a successful addition is being done to the order entry form. So that's the when to do part. And once you provide the trigger point or once you provide the time at which it has to be done, you will also have to give information on what needs to be done. So that's going to be the second step. You'll have to give the when information and you will also give the what information. You have a close friend, you would like to wish him on his birthday, so you do that on his birthday, not on the other 364 days. You do that on that specific day. So that's a when to do. And what to do, you wish him happy birthday. You don't wish him happy anniversary. You don't wish something like that. You do, the when to do should be right, plus the what to do should also be right. So this information we are going to feed into the system and go ahead with the automation process. Now, where can we implement or where can we add a Deluge script into an application? So that's done in the workflow part of Zoho Creator. Yesterday in another session, you would have seen how workflows can be configured without code, just using the point and click actions. The basic automations can be done without any code. When there is some kind of complexity, or I would say some kind of a more complex logic is involved, we make use of code. And Deluge is highly powerful, so any kind of complex logic, we should be able to achieve it, provided we give these two information properly, the when to do and the what to do information. And this is the workflow screen. And to write scripts, we are going to make use of the Deluge script option. And that would take you to this screen. This is exactly where you specify when an action needs to be triggered. So there are 6 different options in here. On load of the form, when you load the form, you can alert something or you can have some kind of an automation. Say if it is in the morning, someone is accessing the application in the AM hours, wish them a good morning. If it is the afternoon, wish them a good afternoon, something like that. Okay, I would like to deviate a bit. I would like to explain one more concept before I explain what the onValidate is about. Every form that is being created in Zoho Creator has a table created in the backend. And whenever you add a new entry into this form, a new row of entry is added to the table in the backend. Now, when you hit on submit, the information gets added to the table. That's the basic design. And in the when to do section, in the trigger points, you see number 2 and number 3, on validate and on success. What's the difference between these two? When you hit on submit, the data gets added as a new row in the backend table, right? If you need some kind of an action to be triggered before the data is added to the table, you write the script under onValidate. You want some kind of an action to be triggered after adding the entry into the table, you write the script under onSuccess. And then you have onUserInput. In a creator form, you have the ability to have up to 70 different fields in it. And on input of every field, you will have the option to, it can act as a trigger point. You can have some kind of an action triggered in the backend. And if there is any subform usage in your application, when you add a new row into the subform, or when you delete or remove a row in the subform, you may also trigger some workflows. Other than this, there is no other use case scenario within the application. All your scenarios can be accommodated in these 6 categories. So this is when to do. And regarding what to do, there are a lot of tasks that can be done with Deluge. Quickly give you a small intro about the basic tasks in here, and we'll see the demo and get our hands dirty there. So in what to do, number 1, you can apply some condition. Tina gave a very good example with the traffic lights. If the condition matches a certain criteria, perform some action. If it does not match, perform another action. There can be a lot of combinations in there. If, else if, a lot of combinations you can have. This is condition based. And then you also have the option to access the data within your application. You may either check your existing data. Say, for example, you are receiving a new order. You would like to know the total revenue provided by that specific customer. So that can be pulled out. You can check the existing database, check all the orders placed by this specific customer, get the total revenue, display it, or if you want any other calculation to be done, you'll be able to do that. And when you say data access, you will have the option to read information that has already been added into the application, or add new information into the system. That's the add record option. Fetch record is basically to read information from the existing data. Aggregate is, fetch is you basically get that information. Aggregate is some kind of an aggregate function, like get me the total number of orders placed by this customer, something like that, or the mean order value. You will be able to get all those information using the aggregate records. And you'll be able to update an existing record. That's the update record task. And if needed, we can also delete information that has already been added. And there is one more in here, which is for each record, which is basically to have some kind of an iteration process to be done. Like, say, for example, there are 50, 60 people in this room. For every person in this room, I would like to give a brochure. So that's more like an iteration. I have to do it for every person. If it is 100, I'm going to repeat that process 100 times. If it is 200, I'm going to do the same process 200 times. So that's some kind of an iteration process that we are doing. And then we have some client functions. When you say client functions, it is basically what you see on the form. It happens right in front of your eyes. Like, say, for example, based on a condition, you are hiding or showing a field that is hidden. So that's something that you can literally see. This is happening. You can enable or disable a field. Add append item. This is applicable to a drop-down value. Say, for example, you have a drop-down, gender, male, female, others, something like that. In case if you want to add the third option in there, you can write a script, add or append trans into the gender category. We can do that through the scripting rather than hard coding into the application. We can have that done dynamically. Select or deselect is again applicable for a drop-down field or a pick list. You can instruct the system to choose that option by default. So that's select and deselect. The same option is applicable for multi-select fields as well, or checklist fields as well. That's select all and deselect all. And in case if there are any existing selections in a pick list, you can use the clear option to clear them out. Alert, simply to throw an alert, just a normal message. Reload form, as the name implies, the form would be reloaded. You trigger that function. And there are some miscellaneous function as well. The first one is going to be the most widely used, in my opinion, is set variable, or in other words, you can call it as set value. You can either set a value to a specific field, Or you will also have the ability to assign variables. You can say x equals so and so, y equals so and so. You can assign that in the script and perform calculations based on that. You have a specific code that is used in various places within your application. So in such cases, we create a function and refer to that function or just call that function wherever required. That's with the call function. Send mail, you can trigger an email. And info is sort of more like an alert statement, but it's used only by the administrator for some debugging processes. You can use the info task. We'll check an application now. And for the sake of this demonstration, I have created a sample application called Zilker Car Service Center. I'll quickly walk you through the application and then we'll see what kind of automation we can do in here. Right, this is the app we have built. It's a very simple application to collect customers' information. On a car service center, what all would we generally see? You would need a table or a form to collect customers' information. That's what we have in customer details. All their basic details, including their cars, make and model, can be added in here. The different kinds of complaints or different kinds of services that this service center does, that is being maintained in a table along with, if this is a complaint, what is going to be the appropriate fix and what is going to be the service charge. So all those information are being displayed in here. You have a table for employees. You basically add the service details into the car service form. That's the design of the app. Provide the date on which you are receiving the car. Select the customer name. In case if they are an existing customer, we can also populate the last time when they had their car serviced with us, the different complaints that are in there, and we also have a subform where you can add the complaint, the appropriate fix, the service charge, and finally a total, the total service charge that you're going to incur. Now, as of this time, this application does not have any workflow added into it. Let me show you that as well. So workflow, there is no workflows added, so no automations are in here. Now we'll try to add some sample automations into this application to see how Deluge can actually be used in a real life scenario. Our first task is going to be, we have a date field. Whenever you fill in the form, almost 100% of the time it's going to be today's date that you're going to use there. So why don't we automate that? Why do we have to let the user select the date? We'll try to automate that. So back to the basic point, whenever there is an automation, you'll have to define two main pieces of information, when to do and what to do. So on load of the form, we need the task, we need this action to be triggered. What are we going to do on load of the form? Load the current date. That's a very simple solution that we have. So when to do is on load of the form. What to do? We are going to populate the current date. So I'm going to create a new workflow here. So we are creating a workflow now. We'll go with whatever needed information is asked for. So in which form are we having this automation to be done? It is in the car service form. So I will select car service. When you want this to happen, when you add a new service entry. So that's going to be while you are creating a new record. So I'll go with the created option here and I'll name the workflow as onload. You're free to give whatever name you want. I'll just go with onload. Now we are going to do the when part. So I'm going to add a new action. We are going to make use of Deluge script. So that's the last option I'm going to select. And you have the when to do part now. So when to do, onload. I'll select onload. What to do? We are going to assign a value or set a value to the date field. So we'll see what task can suit this operation. We are going to set a value or assign a value to a specific field. We have data access, which is to read existing data or to add new information. Now we are simply setting a value to a field. That can be done with the miscellaneous task called set variable. So I can simply drag and drop set variable. And I can set which variable. I can either say, I can assign a value myself, I can declare a variable myself and assign a value to it, or I can also assign a value for a form field. In this case, we are going to assign a value for the date field. So I can simply select date field, done with the left hand side. Right hand side should be the current date. So with Zoho, Zoho has a system variable, like say for example, the date, time, what time zone the application is set into, what kind of date format, all those information are captured by default by the system. So I'll just go ahead and say Zoho dot current date, and I can save this. So on load of the form, we have set an action where the date field is populated with today's date. All right, let me check if it works as expected. Do a quick reload. There we go. Now, when you add the service details, generally when a customer leaves the car with us, with the service center, they'll just provide information about the complaints that they have. I have a faulty steering, I have some suspension issues, something like that. You will not be able to figure out whether it's not literally possible whether the task has been done or not, but we do have fields for that. When you add a new service complaint, you have a status whether the work is in progress or if the work is completed. This is not needed when you actually create an order, right? So why don't we hide these two fields, the status and the notes. Notes, I have added the notes field just because in case if there is something the mechanic needs to notify the manager or the customer, they are going to add notes. Again, both the status and notes are not needed while you are adding a new service entry. So we can hide these two fields as well. So we are good. We are already on the on load section. I can simply drag and drop, hide and show. Hide is what we are going to do. And we are going to hide a field in the subform. So I'm going to select the subform, service details. If I just give this part of script, it will hide the entire subform. That's not what we need. We just need part of the subform to be hidden. So I'll just use a dot here, and the rest of the fields within the subform would be displayed to me. So again, I'm going to hide the notes, and I'm going to hide the status, right? So I can say hide service detail dot status, also another hide, service details dot notes. Save this. We reload the app, and there we go. Now it's only the complaint, fix, and service charge. This is what we exactly need when we are adding a new service entry. Good with the onload. We'll go to the next part. Number 2, we will try to do some data access here. When you select a customer when you select the customer while adding a car service entry, we would like to see if the customer has already had a car service with our organization. So that's going to be step number 1. We are going to check existing data for that. And if yes, we will be populating the last service date. Okay, so when to do? So when to do, when you enter a value for the customer field on user input of customer name, and what to do. Again, it's 3 steps that we are going to do. Number 1, check existing database to see if this customer has already had a service with us. That's task number 1. Number 2, we are going to validate that. If yes, we are going to populate the last service date. If it is a new customer, it's the first time he is coming to us, what are we supposed to do? We don't need the last service date, right? If he's coming for the first time. So if there is no existing record for that specific customer, we'll simply hide the last service date. So 3 tasks that we are going to do here. Number 1, check existing data. Number 2, apply some condition. See if our logic, we apply some logic, see if the customer passes through that logic. If yes, we are populating a value for a field. If not, we are hiding that field. Clear? Can we go ahead with the workflow? And I'm going to add a new workflow while using the form. Again, it's in the car service form that we are doing this automation. We'll go with car service when a new record is being created, and I'll call it on input of customer name. I'll create the workflow. Okay, it's time to add actions now. new action. Once again, it's Deluge. When to do part, we are clear on that. We need the action to be triggered on user input of the customer name. So we'll go with on user input. I'll select customer name in here. We are good. Regarding when to do, we are good here. Now what to do? Again, there are 3 steps. First, check the existing database and see if there is any existing order that is relevant to this specific customer. So we are going to fetch information from the same table. So I'll use a fetch record task. We are now doing some data access here. I'll do a fetch record task. I can give any variable. It's up to me. I'll simply say existing data. What we are actually doing here is we are checking the checking the car service database to see if this customer already has an order with us or had a service with us. So the form from which we are going to fetch or the table from which we are going to get this information is the car service form once again. I select car service. And in the car service form, you'll have a lot of records from all the different customers in there. We'll have to provide a criteria or some kind of a filter to see if this customer has already had an order with us. So filter them or apply a criteria based on the customer name again, equals, I'll again say input.customer name. For whatever customer name you have selected here, the system would automatically check the existing table, see if there is an order available. If yes, we can proceed further. So we have fetched this information. Now, how do we find, even if there is no information in there, the script would run fine. How do we find if there is some data in the variable that we have declared, existing data? So again, we are going to make use of some condition here. We'll make use of a if condition. I'll say if. We have already defined the existing information, so I can use the same thing here. If existing data dot, you have a few functions in here. These are the aggregate functions: average, count, distinct, median, sum. These are aggregate functions. Now what we are going to do is, for this specific customer, we are going to see how many orders are there, or we are going to see if there is an existing order for this specific customer. So when we say that, you can apply the aggregate function called count, which is basically get the number of orders this customer has had with us. That's the count we are taking. And I'll go with the ID field here, because whenever, not just in Zoho Creator, it's applicable to any database. Whenever you add a new row of entry into your system, there is a system defined ID value which is going to be unique for that specific record alone. Just like how you guys have social security numbers, unique for every individual within the US, the same way for every row of information you add into Zoho Creator, you have a very unique ID value. So I'm going to get the count of ID, the number of ID values that this customer has within the database. I'm getting that. And what I'm going to say here is, if that count is greater than 0, it means he has already given us some business. So I'll just use greater than 0. You're good with the condition. So if it is greater than 0, this guy has already had an order with us. So if that's the case, we are going to populate the last service date. So we'll be using a set variable again. Use set variable. Left hand side, we'll be defining to which field you are assigning this value to. So that's going to be last date of service. And in the right side, we'll have to provide a date value. You can either hard code a date value, but that's not a use case. We want the date value from the previous order. So I can simply say existing data dot the date field in the existing data, not the last service date. So we'll go with the date field. If the count is greater than 0, we are getting the date value from the previous record and adding it in here. And I can save it. There are a few keyboard shortcuts that you can use in Deluge. Command S or Control S would save the script. So I'm using the shortcuts here. To get more information about the shortcuts, in the Deluge screen towards the bottom right, you will have the option called keyboard shortcuts. You can find more information there. It's super cool to use. Okay, we are good there. Now, in the fetch task, okay, the question here is, we are getting the existing information, existing order information of the customer from the table. If there is only, if the customer has come to us only once in the past, we are good there. Just one record in there, we are going to take that record, populate the date from that record. What if there are more? What do we actually need if there are more entries? We want the latest entry. So yeah, we'll be doing some kind of a sort. Now, the fetch task that we did in line number 1 does not have any sort or does not have any range associated with it. So I can simply edit this task. I can get information from you. I'll say ID. I'll get the ID value. That's simple to use. And I can apply a sort and ranging as well. Just the right logic that we need to get. So I can sort it with the date field. Right? We sort it by date field. It doesn't matter now. In what order you add entries, you add the historical data in there. We sort it by date field. We are good there. I'll insert that. And now you will see the fetch record. This is what we had defined earlier. Now we have applied the sort and range functionality to this fetch. Now we'll have to do one other change here, because earlier it was a collection, so I can use existing data.id. Now existing data itself is returning the ID value directly. So you'll not be able to use .count. So I'll simply say if the ID value is greater than 0. If the ID value is greater than 0, if there is a valid number in there, it means there is a record and we are going to get that information. This also would not work. We'll have to do one more fetch, because basically in the existing data, we have only got the ID value. We have not got the entire record, the name, email address. We can also do the aggregate function, get the date field, get the maximum date in out of it and apply it in here. Just copy the same script. Instead of the ID value, I'm just going to get the date value. Clear? So I can save the script. Okay, 2 semicolons in there. Yep, we're good. So we are done with the first part of the automation. If there is an existing entry, populate the last service date. And as you guys have suggested, there are a lot of ways in which you can implement a logic into the system. So done with the first part. The next part, if the customer is new, there's not going to be any information that we are going to get in existing data, because there is no existing information in the table. So that's going to be null. So I'll say if existing data is greater than 0, do this. Else, I can simply hide the last service date. Okay, give me a quick, okay. We're good. Done with this automation. We'll see how this works in the real time. I'll do a quick reload. We have 3 customers in here. We'll check the existing service details. We only have information for John. So let's try adding a new service entry. As we have configured earlier, the date field is populated. We're good with that. I'll select customer John. The last date of service is updated automatically. Let's check the data as well. Okay, that's 29th September is the last date of service, and I hope, yep, that is the same that's being populated here as well. So we are good there. Now we'll try to select a customer for whom there is no service entry yet. Let's see how that happens. Good. The last date is now gone. It's hidden. It's dynamic now. Based on the input that you provide, the other fields are displayed or not displayed. Give me 1 minute. Right, we'll have to show as well. So what happened here is, this is some kind of a mistake that everybody does. So when there is no entry, I'm hiding that field, but I have not given instruction to the system to show the field if I am selecting a customer, an existing customer. So that needs to be added as well. So I'm just going to add one more script for this condition. If there is an existing information, I'm going to show last date of service. Quick reload. Select the customer, date is populated. Select another one, the date field is gone. select the same customer again, we got the required things done. Clear? Good here. We'll jump on to the next one. Okay, the next one what we are going to do is, now we have complaints. Let's look at the form once again. You have the option to add complaints in here, and based on this complaint, the application is designed to have subform entries as well, so that you can add more details about that specific complaint. So this is the complaint, this is what I did to fix it, and this is going to be the service charge. So all these needs to be populated. Now you can either do it manually, or all these information are already part of the complaints table. So if this is the complaint, this is going to be the fix, and this is going to be the service charge. We already have a table with all the required information readily available. So we'll try to use that in here. Okay, so our automation 3 is going to be, when you select a specific complaint, we want a row of record to be added automatically into the subform. This has been a long requested feature, and we are happy we are able to come up with this year. We'll see how we can achieve that. Again, simple when to do and what to do. When to do is simple as always on user input of complaints. We are going to do that. What to do? For every complaint that's being selected, we need a new row to be added into the subform. So that's going to be number one. We just don't need an empty row in there. We want values to be populated. So we have complaint, we have fix, and we have the service charge. We need to populate all these three information. And based on the number of services or number of jobs that need to be done, the total would also vary. So we'll also have to calculate the total based on the number of complaints you have selected. So on user input of complaints, we are going to achieve 3 different tasks. We'll quickly see them. New workflow. Once again, while using the form, while using the car service form, while a record is being created, and I'll say on user input of complaints. Okay, we'll add a new action. As always, go with Deluge. Now, when to do is on user input of complaints. So I'll select on user input, select the complaints field, we are good there. So again, we are going to make use of some iteration process, and for iteration we have for each record. Go with a for each complaint in input.complaints. Okay, so for every individual entry in that multi-select field that we have, we are going to run the set of code that would add information into the subform. So again, I am going to define service detail as a variable equals car service form dot subform. The service details, that's the subform name. That's done. That's a blank row. Now I'm going to add information into the service detail. In service detail, the different fields that we have are complaint, fix, and service charge. And all this information is already available in the complaints table. So service detail dot complaint is equal to whatever complaint you have added to this field. You select dent removal here. The same dent removal should be available in the first row as well. This is exactly what we need to happen automatically. So I'll just refer to the same complaint is equal to complaint. Let me know if this is a bit confusing because we have declared a variable called complaint, or maybe I can change this to entry. For each entry in input.complaints, I will also change this to entry. So whatever value is being selected in the complaints field, the same value is selected in the subform as well. So that's entry. And the next field that we are going to populate is service detail dot fix is equal to entry dot fix. From where this information is coming from, I need you to be very clear on this. We already have a table with all the required information. So for this specific complaint, this is the fix and this is the service charge. All those information are already part of a table. We are simply populating that information into the subform. And the same way, we'll also have one other script for the service charge. Dot service charge equals entry dot service charge. So this would add the required subform rows in there. We'll see if this works. Update, go back, reload. It doesn't. We have simply declared variables in there. We have not given the system an instruction to add that into the subform. So I'll add one other script in here. So input dot service details, that's the subform, dot insert. I'm going to insert a row in there, and I have already defined the row in the variable called service detail. So I can simply select service detail, save this, do a quick reload. Okay, compliance, I select dent removal, an automatic row is added into the subform. Need full oil service, repainting needed, fine. We got all the information. Now, there is something wrong in here. So for every time you select a complaint in the multi-select field, the iteration process is repeating. The first time, I send out an email to all 50 people. When I attend the second person, I'm also doing the same thing. When I attend the third person, I'm again doing the same thing. So everybody is going to receive some 100 or 200 emails. That's not what we want. Okay? So on user input, we'll first clear all the entries in the subform and then do the iteration process. So that's one other line of code that we need to add. And before I do the iteration, so on the very first line, I'll say clear input dot service details. Saving it. Do a quick reload. Now I select dent removal. One line is added. I select another one. Basically, what's happening is something that you can't see. It's fast. Basically, when you select dent removal, an entry for dent removal is added. When you select the second issue in steering control, whatever has been added first is being cleared by the system, and then the iteration process happens once again. Okay, we are good with the subform here. There is one last task that we need to do, which is to populate the total order value or the total service value. And that is going to be the sum of all these four, or how many numbers are there, the sum of all the service charges in the subform entries. So that's one other aggregate task that we are going to do, and we can have it done in the same place. When the complaints are being added, you can also populate the total cost and display that directly. So I'm going to say, again, we are going to set a value to a field. So I'm going to make use of set variable. We are going to set the value for the total field. I'll select total. The expression is the sum of all the service charges in the subform. So I'll say input dot service details dot. We are going to make use of an aggregate function. So I'll say sum. Sum of which field? It should be a numerical field. So that's, we already have something called service charge in there. I'll say service charge. Save the script. We're good. Let's check the application. Okay, let me add a few complaints. There we go, 150 plus 70. No, I have done something wrong. What I did wrong was in line number 2. Other than that, everything was good. But line number 2, I had used a script called clear space the subform name. It should have been input dot service details. That's the subform name dot clear, and we'll have to call it as a function. That should work good. Save this now. Let's check the application. Put in a complaint, that comes good. Second one, third, fourth. Yeah, there it comes good. All right, just like to explain you or inform you about the amount of complex operations that you can do with Deluge. Power of Deluge or the power of Zoho Creator is such that per execution, you can trigger up to 50,000 lines of code. So however complex may be your requirement or whatever complex logic you have, it is possible to achieve them with as many lines of code. 50,000 is the maximum, which means on load of the form, you can have 50,000, up to 50,000 lines of code triggered. On user input of every field, you have the ability to trigger 50,000 lines of code. On success, on validate, for every trigger point, you can run up to 50,000 lines of code. And this is some fun element. Everyone knows Popeye, right? What spinach means to Popeye is exactly what Deluge means to Creator. Not just to Creator, now Deluge is an integral part of almost all Zoho applications. So without Deluge, Zoho Creator is just a database. With Deluge, it's a very intelligent database. You'll be able to do smart automations and more complex activities in there. And with that, I would conclude my session.